What's up, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Seams, where we bring hitters and pitchers together to talk about the game so it can grow. I'm really excited about this episode. You're going to love it. Let's get going. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Seams, where we bring hitters and pitchers together to actually just get better as baseball and softball players. So welcome to episode number 2. I'm super excited. Got one of my favorite hitting guys on board with us just to be able to talk hitting, and I'm sure Jon will have some awesome questions so we can kind of just chop it up and really just talk as baseball players, right, and not blur those lines from hitter and pitcher, right. So I also got Zing's guy, the hitting guy over at Fuel Factory. I'll let him introduce him as well. So I'm just going to introduce our guest, which is Lane Adams. Lane Adams is a stud. So Lane played professionally for a while, 12 years. And then he was in the show for a little while, more than a little while, a couple years as well. Got to be around some amazing guys, learn from them. My favorite thing about Lane is he's a big league guy who can absolutely articulate it and teach and break it down and learn how to speak your language and help you, right? I think that's not as common all the time from guys that have been to the peak, right? So, Lane, man, welcome. I'm super excited to have you. Man, I'm looking forward to this conversation and glad to have you, bro.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Excited to be on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Zing, you wanna introduce your homie too? I know I'm excited to have Mark in this conversation too.
Yeah, so I got Mark here, DJ Saucy Sauce. Mark Kruger. I'll let him tell you a little bit about his playing career, but here together, he's basically my right-hand man. He's kind of like you were talking about, but it's like those lines have been blurred. Originally, he was, I'll let you tell, but he was a position player who, from being here at Fuel Factory, turned into a closer too. So he's on both sides of it. So he's an absolute beauty, but I'll let him tell you about Mark.
Quickly learning how similar everything is and how crazy it is. So pretty nuts. But I played 4 years at Utah Valley University and then played 2 years of independent ball, 1 year in the American Association, and then another year in the Frontier League. And I'm pretty obsessed with baseball and hitting and just am digging for more. And I'm in my sponge phase right now and just want to learn as much as I can and give. So
good sponge.
I love it, man. It's a good place to be. Don't ever leave that, man. It's a good thing. It's a very good thing. Yeah, it's important, man. Like the in my opinion, the best ones stay there, right? They keep doing that. So Lane, man, we'll just start off with, man. I just want to pick your brain, man. I think you're brilliant and articulate things awesome. But yeah, so like what? Before we get into the chopping in the weeds, right? What's your first baseball memory, right? From what you can remember, like what about this game drew you? I know, and side note, and you can correct me a little bit, right? So Lane's an incredible athlete too, right? So he played big time basketball and still plays big time basketball, actually. So kind of what's your first baseball memory, or what's your baseball like story? Like, how'd you get into it?
Small town kids, kind of all we did. Played Little League with all my friends. I remember that being like a lot of fun. We were the White Sox, had the cool uniforms. That was back when, Frank Thomas is on the team, Rob Ventura, a bunch of all those guys. So that was always fun. We won our championship the first year in T-ball. And that was kind of the first memory that really got my love for baseball at that time going. And it kind of got my the love for competing. That's kind of where it all started, is that young age, and it kind of just blossomed from there, and kept playing the game through a young age, and so just kind of starting at a young age. My mom was our coach, and so that it's getting the ball rolling at a really young age with the Tallahassee White Sox. It was where it started.
That's awesome. I love that.
What state was that? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a small town called Red Oak, Oklahoma. It's a town about 500 people. I graduated 14 kids in my senior class. Very, very small town. But yeah, middle of nowhere, southeast corner, the only county in Oklahoma without a Walmart.
Wow.
All right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's our stat fact of my hometown.
I'm a small town boy too. So I grew up in, I had to commute like 20, 25 minutes to a high school that was big enough because,
Jeez.
Yeah.
Man.
I love it, man.
We always joke with that.
I'm grinders, man. I love them.
35 people there, but yeah.
Golly.
So Zing's a Michigan State guy, and it's funny because he liked the cold weather, and then he moved to Arizona. So now I don't know if that's lead. So
Yeah, I say no to snow now currently, so that's out.
No more snowballs.
Unless we go to Sedona for a day, I guess.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Sedona's different, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's cool, man. So yeah, what was coming up, right? Like in high school and all that stuff. Like, what was the most challenging part of like being you and, just Lane kind of being like the guy that you were and the athlete that you were and stuff like that? Well, I mean, there probably wasn't tons, right? One, being at a smaller school, but then two, being able to like dominate the field athletically like you did, right? But what was the most challenging part?
The most challenging part was not getting complacent. Like, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, but I was like the best athlete in our area, both baseball, basketball, kind of anything. But at the same time, like, there was a lot of like older athletes that came from our area that I grew up watching, and they didn't really, I guess, reach their potential or, play on to see their potential. And that is kind of something I didn't want to fall into. I wanted to be someone who could like go play somewhere outside of our area. And so that was always kind of drove me I wanted to be the first athlete from our area to kind of like get out and do something. So that was kind of that was the biggest challenge, is just at a young age, just having the discipline to just kind of work day in, day out. And this is it, basketball, not baseball. There was a time I wanted to quit baseball in high school. My mom wouldn't let me. And I would have if she would have let me. So it was just kind of that drive to want to just reach my potential, whatever that was. That was kind of what I wanted to do.
I like that, man. Yeah, I think that's a difficulty, right? When you're in a small pond, right, is the ability to to do that, right? Because there's there's pluses and minuses of huge, 6A, 7A towns too, right? There's both, right? But I think that is definitely a challenge that when you're when you're a big fish in a smaller pond, right? It's smaller, it's hard, right? Because of the size. And I think that, I think that's interesting. So I know the story about the baseball versus basketball, right? And when you started like getting like pretty prominent into the baseball, but like for everybody else, and how did that kind of work? Because Lane's being subtle, like he was really good at basketball. He's still really good at basketball. So like, yeah. So kind of how did that work? Like just like briefly, like kind of talk about that.
So I stopped playing. I played summer baseball until I was about 12. Then I started playing basketball. My mom was a basketball coach in high school when I was young, so I was always around the game. Then I started playing AU basketball, and I was really good. Basketball was something that was just really natural. It just like flowed to me, and it was something I wanted to do. I wanted to play at that. Like, it was the first time I started playing AU basketball. Play with some guys who are in the NBA now. I was like, man, this is something I want to be playing with these guys. This is what I want to do. And then I just kept playing. I kept playing baseball at the time because I was so young. But I was coming home from our last tournament, our AAU tournament this summer, and it was Sunday. We had a fall baseball game the next day. And I told my mom, it's like, I don't want to play baseball anymore. I was a sophomore, about to start my sophomore year. So I don't want to play baseball anymore. I just want to play basketball, because that's what Xavier Henry was doing. That's what all these big name Blake Griffin was doing at the time, and all those guys. So I was like, that's just something I want to do. And She's okay. And then she turns in, like, we're supposed to turn left. She goes right home. We're like 30 minutes away from home after a 5-hour drive. And she says, like, where are you going? She's like, well, if you're not going to play baseball, like, you got to go work at Sonic, right? The fast food place. I was like, wait, what? Like, she never made it. She said, as long as I'm occupied in sports or whatever, I don't have to work. So I was like, well, I'm going to take. So we didn't have football. It's a small school. We had fall baseball. So instead of playing fall baseball, I'm just going to play basketball. Just focus, you ready for my sophomore basketball season. And she quickly nipped that in the butt as soon as she said I had to get a job. So I didn't want to be chauffeuring shakes and limeades on skates. So I just I started to play baseball, and it ended up working out for the most part.
I'd say a little bit.
We had a pretty good team. Won some state championships in baseball, so it ended up being a pretty good run.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love that. I think multi-sport athletes definitely have like a different perspective, right? But even ones that turned baseball late, right? Like Tim Anderson's another one that I think is super cool, right? That like he played baseball throughout, right? But he had opportunities to go. I believe he had opportunities to go wherever he wanted to play football wise, right? And he decided to go junior college to play baseball. It obviously worked, but I mean, after his first year, right, he kind of wasn't great his first year, but then he just like exploded, right? So I'd always just love hearing that perspective, right? Because for me, it's always been like, baseball, right? And like I think that kind of burned me out. To be completely honest, a couple years ago, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to pick up a ball. I don't want to go to a game. I don't want anything. And so I think that my perspective has been listening to people that, where it wasn't the top priority all the time. Like, I think that it's somewhat helped with that, right? Like not losing the desire, the passion for it, right? Because like the competing is always going to be there, right? Like that's what we really like is the competing, right? Like that the high that we get from the competing, like that's we were talking about that in the college group the other day. It's like, look, like the high you get from that and winning in competition, like it's very hard to find that in the real world. So like enjoy it and soak it up, right? So so like so what about the bait, right? Because realistically you probably could have gone and played either one, right? Like at the next level, basketball or baseball, right? So what kind of like drew you there to the
you would have thought I could have. I didn't have any baseball scholarships out of high school. I didn't want any.
Yeah.
It was known in the area I was not playing baseball in college. Like I was a basketball first guy. It was kind of started toiling in my mind was scouts started showing up and whatever. But then like they started like talking as their agents coming around like, hey, this guy can, and you're a dual sport athlete, so that's gonna like bonus. They start throwing bonus money at me and stuff like that. But we're being honest. We're gonna be honest, and it's one of those things that I didn't know anything about baseball. I didn't follow the draft. I didn't know anything about it, and it's one of those things where one of the advisors like, hey, like even if you don't want to go to play professional baseball, you can. We want to play basketball. We can start maybe work it out to where you can do both. And that sort of like, okay, that's kind of got me more open-minded to it. And then it's like, here's the thing, you could go play 2 or 3 years. If you don't like it, you can go back and play college baseball. Or college basketball. They'll pay for your school, all that stuff. So once they kind of started like, kind of showing me like a little bit of like that type of stuff, like, give me some options.
Yeah.
I started being a little open-minded about it. And the more open-minded I got about it, it was just piqued my interest more.
Yeah.
And so I started actually, that was the first time I actually started like hitting on my own in my juniors, senior season, that I started like actually like hitting and, doing some stuff on baseball side of it outside of high school practice. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that though. That's cool. So like, what's one thing that, so like we develop, right? We grow, we get stronger, we get faster, all these different things, right? We learn technique that's right. We learn mechanical things that are right. All those things, like you're going to develop, right? But like, so what was something that like stuck with you from like when you were in high school till even when you stopped playing, right? Something that like that still worked about your swing or still worked about your mentality, right? Like, because like I know like an example would just be like I know for me like I could like if I felt my elbow tap my rib cage, that would always remind me that like, hey, I need to do this movement here right first, and that like even when I stopped playing, like that still could help center me right a little bit. So like, what was something that like like it just like worked, right? Because like these guys that are like top tier, right, athletically, like they can just make those moves, and I'm sure you'll be able to talk about that some more later too. But just like, but the ability to like do that so quickly, right? So it was like, what was one thing that like kind of helped you, but like in high school, but then even like still like stuck in your brain, even when as you played professionally?
Yeah, man, there's one thing, and it's simple, and you're right, lasting from like ninth grade all the way until into my career. We had my high school, we had a really nice baseball field. It was like back before all the tin walls, and we're from rural Oklahoma. Like there's not nice stuff in our area. Beautiful baseball field, like nice tin walls, like the little shape in the center field. We had our logo right in the middle of it. And our coach would just scream right back, and it was RO for Red Oak, because right back at the RO. That's all he yelled at us. Like he didn't say anything else. Mechanically, he just, hey, we got to wax this right back at the RO. So that's what stuck with me from. I probably heard that 8th, 9th grade.
Yeah,
definitely my freshman year, and that stuck with me all the way. So that was still 32, 31.
I love that, man. Yeah, I think something that's super important, man, is that like as we break down the mechanical, as we take in information, is the ability to assimilate it, right? And the ability to then funnel it down into something simple. And so that's why I think it's so unique to be able to talk to somebody like you that has had all the mechanical, right? Has so much information. You could probably have 2 PhDs in hitting by now, right? I'm sure. But then be able to funnel it down into the simple. I think such a huge percentage of hitters, even pitchers, really, like anybody, just struggles with that, the ability to funnel that down into a simple, right? So I think that's a really, that's I don't know if it's a skill, but I think it's something you can definitely practice, right? So like, what are some, like, how did you do that, right? How did you keep like making sure that you were able to like keep things, take all that stuff in and work with all the guys that you work with, but then be able to funnel it down to simple in the game?
To be honest, Cameron, I didn't. Hitting was never simple for me. It was never, as much as I tried to simplify it, I didn't. Yeah. As I got older, I started to simplify it better, but early on, it wasn't simple. It was a lot of moving parts. But the ways when I would have my best successes, and this is obviously being me more mature at this point.
Yeah.
It was just when I got up there and just trusted everything I'd done. Just, you know what, I can be focused on my mechanics and focus on seeing this ball. I've done the work. I've done all of this, and let me just go out there and just do the best I can. I would have a steady routine before the game, or before BP, cage work, and then I have a steady one during BP, steady one during my pregame. Then just trust it, trust the work, trust the preparation, and know that's why you work and prepare. You work and prepare so you can just shut it off and go compete that night. And once I started to like buy into that, and I didn't for a long time, because it's way easier said than done.
100%.
But once I was able to do that, that's kind of when the consistency came up, kind of just a lot more, just better, more. That's when I learned how to be a more professional hitter.
That's good.
I say for half my career, I was just an athlete. I was just a baseball version, like Tim Tebow in a sense. I kind of had a little better idea what he was doing out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of what really helped me become a more consistent hitter at times. At the upper levels, I was a good enough athlete at the lower levels, low A rookie ball I roll out of bed, fortunately, and just go hit, and hit 285 at those levels. But as I got older and had to be a more sophisticated as a hitter, that's when that was when I started to kind of get out of my own way. That was kind of when it started to all kind of gel together. And then when you trust something that works, it helps you trust a little bit more. So that was kind of the difference there.
Yeah, that's wise. So who you got to play with a lot of cool people, right? With and across from whose routine did you like? Was there somebody's routine that stuck out the most to you that you just were like, man, this dude is just religious with this stuff, or man, like I love his routine, or anything like that?
I didn't play with them, but JD Martinez, when I started changing my swing, that was the one guy I watched. I think I debuted in 2014, and that was the year JD went off with the Tigers. And I was like, man, I got called up in September. We played the Tigers like 9 or 10 times that month. And so I went out there and watched him take batting practice. I said, this guy's not that big. He's just meleeing balls out to right field. He's not that much bigger than me, if he's bigger than me at all. And so that was someone I really studied. I wish I would have talked to him then, but I didn't. And that's, I think, the next following year, year or two later, I went Craig, and that's kind of he helped me kind of get. I said, one swing I studied is JD Martinez a lot, just because we have similar body size and things like that. And he kind of showed me some things that JD did, and can we kind of is this going to work for you? And the things that did, we added, and things that didn't, we didn't. And it's kind of blended some things and added our own little spiel to it. But yeah, JD Martinez is one. I didn't really study all of my teammates. I guess I wasn't impressed with what I was seeing. I don't know, but I played with a lot of good hitters. Yeah. But up to that point, that JD Martinez was kind of who I was just glued to.
That's cool though. Yeah, I feel like so many people are obsessed with him. All right, and I think some people get tired of it, but I think the obsession roots from exactly what you're talking about, right? Like he just dug in. I mean, he got DFA'd a couple times, man. Like he was on his way out from what he said from his own mouth, right? He was on his way out. And so like just the ability to like somebody who just kind of stood up, right? And figured it out. And now look at him. I mean, he's freaking. And what's cool is he hasn't changed, I think, right?
Exactly. That's kind of what drew me to him. Was like, man, he was just diligent and consistent. Like he believed what he believed in, like he was bought into it. And he was consistent with it. It wasn't like just throwing things to the wall, hoping it sticks. Like he was seriously bought into it and believed in it. And again, it goes back to, if you trust what you're doing, it was something that I wanted to get, something that I trusted as much as he did. And that was kind of why I was so, not so much the physical mechanical standpoint, but the mental side of it, how he studies it, how he approaches it, how diligent he is with his work. That was something that really drew me to it, because that's what makes him a Silver Slugger winner.
Yeah, and that trust part, I don't think can be overstated, right? It's a word and a phraseology, right, that is encompassing, right? So it just like people use it for so many different things, right? Because it encompasses a lot. But like the ability, I think what I hear you saying, right, is like once I could trust. So once I knew what I was doing was going to help me, and once I knew that this routine was what I needed, like I could just trust it and do it every single time, right? And tweak here when I needed to, like whatever, right? Little adjustments is fine, but like then like it's not constant adjustments in the box, right? Because like it's impossible to do that with the amount of skill that you're facing across, not only from the pitcher, but then the fielders, right? There was an article that came out that Mags, right, the guy from the Braves, he and I were talking about. He was like, people think it's the shift, people think it's this. It's also because defense is higher and better than it's ever been, right? And these guys play deeper than they've ever played, and they have stronger arms.
Valued,
better athletes. They're better athletes, and
just like crazy, right? Like, and so like I think it's like. That's the trust, because it's not only now just like I got to beat the pitcher, but like I have to like it's shrunk. Everything is shrunk, right? And so like I think that's why I think that word, right, is so important for people to understand, right? It's like that's why we put out drills, right? Like one of the things I love about Lane is like he's always like, you can tell like, he'll put out a drill or something like that, right? But you can tell like he's working on feeling something himself, right? And it clicked, and it's like, hey, like you can add this into your arsenal, right? I believe that a lot of people look at drills as a fix, when in reality, they're just a bridge, right? I've got here's where I am, here's where I want to be. Now the drill helps me bridge that, right? And so like it's because like that's why some of those Gene Segura is one that comes to mind, right? Where he literally they toss him a baseball and he literally hits it down on top of the plate, right? Like, but it helps him feel different. It helps him. That's his trust. That's his trust, right? So I think that's why I think it's really important for people to kind of understand what you're talking about there, right? Is the trust, because that's not just like, hey, I trust that you're going to go where you say you're going to go. It's I have bought in to what I'm doing, knowing that it's going to prepare me so I can relax, right? And I think a lot of people don't know how to do that, but a lot of people don't spend a lot of time learning how to do that because it's easier to, do a drill 7 times. I think that's gonna fix it all, right? So like I love it. I love what you said about that. I think that's super important. Just to understand, those are the kind of things that I love listening to guys that play at the highest level talk about, right? Because it's like I've been around enough of them to know kind of what certain words mean, right? Because not everybody's an A+ communicator, which is totally okay, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that, right? We're just learning what these different things mean, right? It's like that's what they're talking about. They're talking about this trust. This is why I do this because it makes me feel whatever it is, right? And that's where I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, man, I don't care what you need to feel. I don't care I don't care anything. What I want you to be able to do is trust, and let that routine be the same every day, right? Because that's what people like. I tell people to go to BP, right? Big league games, AAA games, AA games all the time, right? And I think a lot of them think sometimes they're gonna see something they've never seen before. It's like you're gonna see a lot of boring things, a lot of balls hit out of the yard, right? But you're gonna see a lot of boring things, and you're gonna watch a guy, that could hit the ball out every single pitch, but is gonna work this way or gonna work that way to work on something, and that's boring, right? But I think that's the embracing of the boring allows you to just be there, right? Allows Votto talks about like, man, when I'm clear and I trust my preparation, I let my mind solve all the problems, right? I let my mind solve the timing issues. I let my mind solve this, right? Like, JD Martin or Josh Donaldson was one of the first people to talk about publicly where it's like, hey, I can hang my leg up higher in the air on a breaking ball. People are like, what? He's like, well, I don't think about it. Like my brain does it for me, right? I'm not frontal lobe thinking about it. My brain is doing it for me because my eyes and my brain are closest organs that work together, right? Eyes and the brain, short distances where stuff can work together, right? So I think that's huge, man. I think that's such a valuable insight, right? Is the ability to, you had to dig to find it, right? That doesn't mean that anything, right? It just means you got to a point where you're good enough, wasn't the best anymore, and it's like, man, I just gotta adjust, right? Like that's what I love so much about a lot of, like, even Trout, man. Trout went to a guy, what was it, 2 off seasons ago, and he's like, I've never felt better, and like Donaldson talks about all the time. He's like, man, most people in the big leagues don't have a clue what they're doing. They don't have a clue what their body's doing. They don't have a clue what they're doing with anything. They're just that good. And like the ability to like learn that, I think is really, really transformed some things, right? For JD Martinez or whatever. So I love that JDM was one of your guys that you kind of watched from afar, right? That's pretty awesome.
No doubt.
Yeah, I love that, man. So who was funniest teammate you ever had?
Funniest?
Yeah.
As far as
all the above.
Funniest teammate all time is probably Brian Fletcher. He was from Auburn. He didn't play in the big league. He got to triple. He hit. He really hit. His dad's a big league coach. Brian Fletcher's probably the funniest. Dante Bichette Jr. is really funny.
Really?
I've remembered him with 1 year. He's really funny. Whit Merrifield's pretty funny. Yeah, those are probably my top 3, right? Luke Jackson. Yeah, there's a lot of funny guys out there.
I bet, man.
Gerard Dyson's hilarious.
Yeah, I've heard good things about him. Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a bit.
That's
Those
awesome.
are my top 4.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What you got, Zing?
As far as my funniest teammates,
Oh yeah, I mean that's always.
oh man, I'm just going back. I had a college guy at Michigan State. His name's Dylan Putnam, but he could do impersonations, and this kind of dates me a little bit. But we played against Ohio State, and it was a rain delay, and Nick Swisher was on Ohio State, and Swish always had some flair, and he had these big wristbands, and just you knew it was him when he was up to the plate. And we're in the middle of a rain delay at the Lugnut Stadium, and we're doing the old fashioned, you right on the ball and throw it back and forth or whatever. And all of a sudden, Putnam comes out of the locker room all geared up like Swisher and goes out and acts like Swisher at the plate in the middle of the rain, and Swish comes out and tips his cap. It was but also make fun of me in PFPs. I think it was my freshman or sophomore year or whatever. I picked up this bunt play and I threw it like 30 rows deep, right? So every time we do PFPs, Putnam was always doing a reenactment of that. Uncle Rico throw over the mountain. So
Oh, I love that. Uncle Rico, baby. I love it.
Never gets old.
It's awesome.
yeah, there's so many that come to mind, but yeah, that's probably the top one for me.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. So Lane, what obviously you've moved from being a player to now helping people. What is your greatest challenge? Well, yeah, what's your greatest challenge when it comes to helping people get it or helping those light bulb moments happen for people?
Getting them the 2 things that challenge me the most is getting just hitters to be aware of their body and understand the importance of it. Like the importance of, your joints being mobile and stable. Those little, I was their age too. And there's a time when ankle mobility stuff was not very fun to me either. And I get that. It's just kind of getting them to buy into the importance of that. And also getting them to understand that this is challenging. This is hard. What you're doing is hard. I tell them all the time, I dick with my swing forever. And it still had instances where things with bad habits would pop up. It's never going to be perfect. We're chasing perfection, but it's never going to be perfect. That's why we had to consistently work. Even if you make it to a 20-year MLB career, you'll never stop working at this. It's a constant. It's a non-negotiable. Getting them to understand, kind of buy into that and understand this has to be day in, day out to get to where I want to be. If I want to be at a prominent level. So those two things are by far the biggest challenges for me so far. But like I said, it's just communicating. It's kind of just getting them to believe in what they do is working and is helping. So they have the trust and the desire to want to show up every day and put the work in.
Yeah, that's good. Because I think you're spot on with that, because until the fire inside of somebody else is lit, right? You're working with a cold fire, right? You're working with nothing there, right? And so the ability to, that person has to light the fire, right? But until it's there, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get people to do what they need to do. Because I always say, look, I hear you and I totally get what you're saying, but I got to see it. You got to show me. You got to show me that it's there. And I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you right now, if you can take one step on your own, I'll take the other 9. Right? Eventually, I don't want to be taking any steps. Right? But right now, if you'll give me 1, I'll give you 9, and then I'll taper back. Right? But I think that's hard, right? Because it's supposed to be easy. There's supposed to be an it, right? I think that's what's so cool about this group of guys that we have that are hitting guys, right? We have all bought into the fact that there's no it. There's no it, right? We're trying. That's why I love what you said there. Find out who you are, and then buy into the hard work to progress that, not some other person, not some other something, right? And I think that is extremely difficult, because the mechanic part, the information part, it's not that it's easy, but it's very doable, right? But I think like until that fire is lit, right? There's nothing to fan, and so you're trying to fan and throw gasoline on something that's not lit yet, right? And so I think that's very difficult.
I think sometimes it come from the game kicking your butt too, right? Where it's like if the game's not challenging you, or if you didn't match up with, let's say, a nasty pitcher as a hitter and you're just raking all the time, it's like you can just fall out of bed and do that. Where it's like somebody shoves it and all of a sudden you're like, I got to get better, And from the other standpoint too, it's like for guys that haven't really got hit before and they're dominant, they just kind of show up like that. And then all of a sudden you get your lunch handed to you and everything changes just a little bit, And I think that's why what we were talking about before with the multi-sport athlete and the cross training and the competing, how there's certain aspects that are the same. I think what we call the chaos theory, but it's like you got to keep things. Yes, you need a routine, but you got to keep things fresh and you got to mix things up as well. There's got to be a balance in there.
Yeah, I think so, right? You have to. Yeah, you have to, because the mind is made to find the path of least resistance and then stay there. That's all we're supposed to do, right? Like, well, that's one function of the brain, right? Like if we can push past that, right? Like there's lots of different things. One of the best analogies I've heard is when David Goggins talks about the 40% rule, right? When your brain starts complaining, your physical starts complaining, you got about 40% more to give, right? It's like as soon as you get to that point, you got about 40% more of what you can do, right? And so like the ability to that's hard, right? Because the brain goes to the brain groove, and the brain groove is where you walk the most. The road most traveled is going to be, that's where the phrase comes from, right? Is that brain terminology thing of like, hey, like most people are just going to look for a path. They're going to walk with a path. Well, it's like, well, why don't we just go this way? Because it's easier. Not everybody, like I'm very, as a person, I'm very wired that way, right? And so I need to do a little bit more path walking sometimes, right? And so like, but I think it's like, it's hard it's a balance, right? Because you got to be able to do both, and just figuring out who the person is, right? I think it goes back to what Lane was saying about that, right? Who the person is, because then like, when to push them this way, or, hey, we got to come back. You do need to walk on the path for a little bit, right? You got to throw before you can freaking zero out, bro. Like, you know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. The brain wants the brain always wants to work in comfort, man. You gotta get out of that comfort zone, and quite a bit, but yeah, it's getting people to trust the uncomfortable too. It goes back to that, embrace this amount of suck you're about to go through.
Yeah.
You can, understand why we're doing what we're doing, so we can get better and keep progressing.
Well, that I think from personal experience too, right? But then watching other people is like the progressing becomes addicting, right? The growing becomes addicting, right? And that can be a bad thing, but it also can be a very good thing if if funneled the right way and you learn how to do it right. Because it's that if you're focused on your progression, you're focused on the growth, you're focused on the other things. Like there's not a whole lot to look to here and here to there. Like I don't need to do that, right? Because like there were 3 things that I need to get better at that I didn't, right? That's what I love. Like, so Matt Frazier, big CrossFit guy, right? You're not a CrossFit guy, you probably even still know who he is, right? Like he won 5 CrossFit games 5 years in a row. Every single year that he won, he broke his own record for margin of victory, right? Just guy's insane. But he retired, right? Like last year after the games, maybe 2021, I think. I don't even remember, to be honest. But like, so he put this thing out essentially explaining why he quit. And he talked about all these things like, man, like I have to get 10 hours of sleep. I don't drink any kind of alcohol 60 days before a competition. I don't ride my bike. I don't ride my motorcycle 30 days before a competition. I need to just listed all these things off. I can't go on vacation. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't. He's like, I'm ready to have a normal life now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to funnel it down into businesses. But man, it's like that. They build like that. That's what makes those people great, right? And a lot of people like the accolades, but then like, it's like Michael Jordan, not a popular human. Like, he doesn't have tons of friends. You know, like Kobe. People love Kobe now because he's dead more than they liked him when he was alive. To be complete, like that's just the truth.
100%.
Yeah, like everybody wants to talk about the Mamba mentality now, right? It's like everybody, but before that, a large percentage of those people are like, oh, he's just selfish. He's just selfish, right? And like it's almost like buying into limbo, right? Or buying into like what it feels like when you're in space, because that's hitting. That's really like what you're doing, but then like 2 days later it'll change and you won't. Like a catcher that gets the yips. I got the yips one time, and I had no idea why. Still to this day, like I've watched other guys get the yips, and there's not a science behind it, right? There's no it's awful, right? So I think that just getting used to that feeling that's like being in space, it's huge, right? Because then you get addicted to the growing, and I don't have other things to look at, right? That's why JD's still going back to that Sosa guy, right? Like, and all these other things, right? And it's like, even, this guy hits with Marcelino, and then he goes and spends 3 weeks with David Reck, and then does this, and it's just I think if anybody can take anything from what these athletes are doing now, it's just that the constant. I have a routine, and then I'm challenging myself with the chaos constantly, right?
Yeah, it never stops. It never stops. This thing, JD's going to get a lot more hittable pitches, or I'm going to get a lot more hittable pitches than JD's going to get. Like, it's his job is harder. Like, he's not just going to get 2-0 fastballs like they're going to throw me. Like, it never. The levels, each level you get to, the work just never stops. You're constantly trying to progress, and you have to, or that's when you start to, like, you're never going to stay there. Like, it's either going to be one or the other.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
and it's like JD's at the point in his career where he's looking for sliders on 2-0. Like, I can't, like, people can hear that, but they don't understand that, right? Like, our whole life we've been looking for a fastball so we can do something with it, right? But like JD's at a point. Miggy's the same way. Miggy never sees fastball. Like, Miggy looks for he sets you up so he can get a changeup because it's closest to the fastball. Like, I've heard him say that before. It's like, yeah, sliders are hard, especially how hard they throw them now. Like, it's hard. Like, if a guy's got a changeup, I'll try and work to get to where I can see the changeup, because I know, like, I can adjust my timing and it's closest to the fastball movement. I'm like, dude, like, that blows. I can't understand. Like, that makes a lot of sense, but like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's crazy. And it's as you continue to progress, like, or even someone like Pujols, right, who was so fast twitch, so quick, so we're just insane, right? Now he's in freaking the Dominican playing in winter ball, like reinventing his swing because he has to, because he's not as fast, right, or whatever it is. But you're right, that's it. It never stops, right? Or because there's going to be an injury, you're going to break your big toe, or you're going to break your little toe, and then you're going to have to your body's going to interact completely different. And like, it's like, it's huge, man. So I think that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So what are your non-negotiables for a hitter or a mover? So
as a hitter, my non-negotiables, staying connected to the ground and rotating from the pelvis and trunk. Initiation, pelvic and trunk, the driver rotation. That's kind of my that's my two non-negotiables. Yeah, you get it. I would start saying deceleration, but that can be like, some kids already decel, some kids don't rotate enough, so I don't really.
Yeah, for sure.
That, but I think those two is kind of like where those are kind of two my non-negotiables for now. That's liable to change.
Typically see though that they don't rotate as well because they have a lack of that stability that you're talking about, and that's why they're unable to rotate.
Yeah. I think a lot of the kids, I got kids who just don't have, like, they can't get in the ground because they terrible ankle, hip, knee stability, mobility, whatever it is, and they just can't get in a position to rotate properly, or they never know how. They don't have the, there's a lot of things on why they don't do certain things, but a lot of times, just like I said, it's back of lack of body control and body awareness, and all that stuff. But yeah. Okay.
So
Back
go
to
ahead,
fuel.
John. I'm sorry.
No, I just think it's the same thing with arms too, where it's like that's the cause to the effect of if you can't get in the ground, yeah, you're gonna have to do more with your arm, versus like if you can use the ground. Like our boy Bleak would say, right? The ground's an amplifier.
Absolutely. I tell y'all just learn to get in the ground. The only thing you do is get in the ground. Your swing will be better. It might not be great, but it will be better. Like it will. It's the only thing you do is use in the ground. It will be a little bit better. I promise you. And then it's just kind of getting them to my theory is a lot of kids start swinging bats at young ages. They don't have any stability, any muscles, any joints or anything. So they're just flailing at the ball. They do that for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now they're 13, 14 years old and they're wondering why they're swinging the bat. So just maliciously. So that's kind of my theory on it. It's like, well, they just swung a bat for almost a full decade, just all over the place. So it's kind of rewiring the body, the brain and body to move a little more efficient. That's also very challenging, but that's kind of my theory of it. Is they start off such a young age. They don't have the stability in their joints or in their core or spine to really functionally move properly, swing a bat.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I think that translates too, right? Like to any like fielding but especially throwing, right? You just see so many kids now that like elbow gets in front of the body, or it drags or like all this other stuff, man. And it's just the timing of the body never works together. And I think that's something I would call young, like even like high school, right? Because like I think some of those cats don't even know how their body moves yet. I mean, you got upper echelon guys, right, but again, I wouldn't call them young guys. They're more top tier, right? But like I think it can be almost boiled down to that, right? Is that the timing of your body working together, because really your body will do a lot of the work, right? Like that's what people don't understand, man. Even basic sequencing, right? Like your pelvis will pull you if you're a hitter. So my arm used to hurt all the time when I threw, and like I just threw hard. And like there was a guy that literally, it was after I was done playing, of course, and like he essentially taught me that, right? Like get the foot in the ground with the back heel being still there, just like you're literally just like you'll feel the bat, the pelvis pulling the bat, you'll feel the exact same thing with your arm. And like I PR'd when I 2 years post playing, because I was like, holy smokes, this is crazy. Like, but it's like, somebody like even your body will do a lot of it, man. Like you use the chaos that your body has. Like, hey, my body doesn't like being off the ground. So like there's some turmoil going on in my head. Like you use that, right? Just stay, and then go, right? I mean, I think that I was gonna so one of Lane's got a really good kind of description about as far as the angle of the femur bones and the hips and how that goes from trunk, helps with trunk movement and deceleration and stuff like that. So Lane, I'd love for I think this will kind of definitely play for the pitchers as well, right? But just basic going into that, right? Like the whole just the different angles of it, right? And I have more ability to rotate because of different angles and stuff like that. And I think that's a really spot on example. So I'd love to hear it in your own words, because I'm sure I'm butchering it a little bit, but
it's been a while since I've talked about this. I sent that video of you and Joey with this, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Man, I'm trying to think.
So essentially, right, you were kind
femur
of saying,
bone, right?
Yeah. So once you're here, right,
rotation.
my trunk can move a whole lot more. But when I'm in the area where I'm going to land in a baseball swing or
right. I remember. Yeah. I learned this from this. Picked this up when I was with Bleak and Joey and over there. But one thing that helped, they do those little trunk turns where you stand up, feet directly underneath you. Obviously, your hips and trunk have a lot more rotation because your legs are vertical underneath your hips. As they get wider, have less range of motion, and that's it's enough range of motion. Well, it should be enough range of motion if you're mobile enough to rotate your pelvis and trunk. But a lot of kids aren't, so that's when the feet get involved and a lot of spinning happens and all that stuff. So kind of what just how I'll stand up and do it is when my legs are out. Get my camera set up. My legs are out. Like I have less range of motion to rotate as far as where my legs are under. I have way more range of motion, mobility to rotate. I think a lot of times we land on that launch position. Our femurs are kind of outside of our hips. I mean, that's, we understand that we don't need a whole lot of extra rotation. That's when like the spinning, the feet get involved, and now we're losing direction, cutting off spacing. That's one thing that started to help some younger players get awareness of it, kind of be more hip driven and pelvis driven instead of knee and feet. So that's one thing. It doesn't work for everybody. Some people don't pick it up, but it helped me when Bleak and Joey explained it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that it makes a lot of sense, right? And I think like the ability to understand where the movement originates from and what drives the movements is so important, right? Even just as simply as like having people stand up and do a trunk rotation with their feet underneath of them, right? Their bones underneath them, and then like just spreading out a little bit. It's like, look, like the goal is to do as little as possible to hit the ball the hardest, right? Or the goal is to do as little as possible to freaking have the ball zip off, right? Like, and those are the guys, especially arms, right? Those are the guys that are scary. Like, they're like that guy, what's his name? The guy for the Dodgers that throws like 103 and it looks like he's freaking
Gratterall?
Yeah, looks like he's throwing like 89. And it's just like, dude, like that's the scariest one. Because you get in there like, it's not that fast, it's not that whatever. But then it's like before you get there, like the catcher's throwing the ball back, like
sure.
Yeah, so I think those guys are I think it's super important, right? To just understand like how that works, and because like then the least amount possible, right? It's just all funnel, just control where the space is going, control where the release of force is going, and that's really all there is to it, right? So, yeah. What about you, Mark? You got any questions? Got any statements? Throw it at it, baby.
That kind of just answered. I mean, you might have a different answer, but do you have any commonalities or similarities that hitters do struggle with at all levels? And that might be what just answered that.
I think a lot of people struggle with. I think a lot of people don't understand the ground. I think they're starting to get a little more conversations of that, especially if you're a Bleak or work with guys at the farm system. There's a lot of connections on how we want to actually use the ground, especially those sports players coming out. So I think that's a conversation that's gonna have more like answers and more like kind of broader ranges of ideas. That I think spacing. I think a lot of people don't understand spacing and how improper spacing can manipulate our swing direction, and how our body can get in this and kind of compromise our spacing, which is also going to compromise our swing direction. That's one thing I think is deeply misunderstood. I didn't after I got done playing, unfortunately. And I say this, I say it's simple. To me, it's simple. I know it's not. I think it's something that you can translate to younger hitters. It's just getting that, kind of explaining it to them in the context where it's not so overwhelming, confusing with them, that's challenging. But spacing is definitely the one thing that I think a lot of people or a lot of hitters can really benefit from understanding more of, and kind of, started working towards improper spacing or having better spacing, and, setting themselves up to have better spacing. Again, it all goes back to our body positions, stuff like that. And most of the time, subconsciously, when hitters, they're flowing, they're raking, they have good space. And then all of a sudden they're out of whack, they're, pulling off balls, their spacing's cut off. I think if you can kind of, explain to them the spacing and the whys and why you're raking, why you're not raking, I think that will help hitters a lot more. I think spacing is definitely one of the biggest things that could be of importance.
But there's a guy that that I work with that I kind of like hooked up with Lane a little bit just to like talk about different stuff because they're similar body types, right? Like he's not necessarily as athletic as Lane because I don't know very many people are, but like just very similar. They kind of move the same way, right? And I think that that's been something I've been trying to learn a lot about too, right? Because I understand it, right? But like not the like helping each individual body get there, and knowing that spacing physically is going to look different, but like understanding the capacity of like how we produce that, how that spacing produces good things, right? And so like. Lane was talking about something a couple weeks ago, and essentially, like he said, when you land, right? Like, because what I'm finding a lot of right now, what's on my radar a lot is a lot of people, right? They'll start in that heel, but then they'll move forward into the foot as they travel forward. That just happens, like I think, pretty regularly, right? Even if you're understanding, I'm trying to be here, like that roll forward just happens, right? Because really, we don't know how to move with our hips and our pelvis. We just don't. Consciously, right? And so like something he talked about a lot that I think is that I've seen a lot of help with my guys is getting to that point of land, but then almost feeling like your knees going out a little bit, not like bad, right? But like getting to that point and then feeling like you're there a little bit, so then you're staying in the middle. Now I've got a small window, I've got a short window, right? I just work through that window, and that's how I keep my space, right? And that has helped a lot with decel. That's helped a lot with, like bracing of the front leg, like getting the front hip down into the ground, right? Because that's one of those terms I wish would go away, right? There's lots of them, right? But like get your foot down, right? I think it means so many different things for so many different people, but like I wish people would say get the front hip into the ground, right? Whatever that means, however you're going to get there. Because if I get there, right, and then I can feel that instead of my legs bowing this way, right, I can feel like even just that now the curved part of my hip and my spine is like is in the middle of my body. And now I just operate from there to there and I'm good. And I've just seen like Lane and I have talked a lot about that, like, but like that, I think that's been, because I have a couple guys that naturally stride closed. And I'm like, okay, like I need to grow as a hitting mind and understanding how does this space completely translate for them, because the other guys I can see it like that, right? But how do I make sure and ensure that their spacing is right when it's harder to my eyes, right? And so like I think that's him talking about that. I think is something that's super important, right? And I also saw so Joey Lewis was. When we did the thing in Atlanta, there was a guy. So Casey Smith, right? He just has hits with everybody. Like, just knows everybody. Hits with everybody, right? But like, he was working with a guy that's a big time draft guy, but he's really he's 6'6", right? And he's kind of one of those guys that's figuring out how to use his body. He hasn't known really yet, and so he's been with Casey for like 2 years now, I think, and they're starting to figure some of that out. Well, he was doing a lot of that, getting into the toe and then pushing. He was even pushing from his back heel, which is pretty impressive. So, like, Joey Lewis said the same thing. It's like, hey, like, wait as long as you can with your back leg to fire, but then when you get to the ground, almost feel like you're going on this part of your heel, so that knee will come out a little bit. So now you shrink the window, right? And then the window becomes here, and now just release it from there to there, and you're good. And so, like, that's where I started being like, I don't have any idea what he's talking about right there. So like I need to talk to people that are smart, because like that makes a lot of sense to me. So like I think that, yeah, that's been something that Lane's really helped me a lot with, just with like how he's talked about that, just how to see that spacing. Go ahead, Lane. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it comes down to body positioning. Everyone talks about getting a good position to swing the bat from, and then when you have good position, you're in a good spot with the ground, your middle part of your body where it needs to be, you're going to have pretty good spacing. But I think if you can explain spacing to some players, that will help them create better movements with their body. Okay, this is why I need to keep my middle where it is. This is why I need to stay connected to the ground, keep my glute and hip loaded or whatever, because that's going to give me this proper spacing I need. And some of the complete opposite, like create the space, like
yeah.
It's different ways. I think if you can kind of show the importance of spacing, I think you've seen videos where I kind of draw a line between the middle part of the body and the inside part of the ball like that that helps a lot of kind of understanding this windows we're talking about and how we want to maintain those windows.
Yeah.
That's really helped a lot of my hitters. I wish I'd have done it when I played.
For sure.
But spacing I think is definitely one of the most underrated aspects of hitting when it comes to the mechanical part of it anyways.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because it's a macro cue and it engulfs so many things, right? So even if I'm struggling, like if I can get to a point where I feel like my space is better, it's going to correct 15 other things, 8 other things. And like, I'm all about that, man. Let's find some macros that, you may not be perfect, but if you can think X, Y, Z, like you're going to figure 8 things and you're going to be able to barrel all balls. Right.
And it goes back to being simple. How can you simplify this? Is this stuff as best you can?
You have to. You have to, man. Like you have no shot with the pictures that Zing is making now. Like you have no shot.
God, I'd watch these college games, man, and there's just God.
Dude, I know.
Everyone.
A kid from Gonzaga, man. Like what?
I remember when I first got drafted, you knew everybody who threw 100. There was only like 8 people.
Yeah.
Big leagues, rookie ball, everywhere in between, you knew everyone who threw 100. Now, you got random guys coming out of college bullpens throwing 100 now. It's just, I'm so glad I don't play anymore. I'm so glad I played in the window I did. I don't know how.
It's Zing's fault, man. It's Zing's fault. He's freaking making all these.
I'm telling you. God.
Oh man. Like I see all these freaking bullpens. I'm like, that dude's about to throw triples. One of my first like direct interactions with Zing was he shows me this bullpen from Tyler Glasnow, and I'm literally like watching this from the catcher's perspective, and I'm watching this. And I'm like, dude, I feel like he's like 31 feet away from me. And then he just throwing hammers, and I'm just like, no shot, man. No shot.
He feels like he's throwing 31 feet away from me. Man. He just gets
some of it's because he's like 8'9", but like still.
Gosh, man, it's
yeah.
I like these new age pitching guys, man. Then you go back to y'all need to get a little late Greg Maddux back in. It'll start locating the fastball in upper 80s. Right?
Yeah, you got. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. I'll even give you the 12 inches that Maddux got on.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys on each staff just for a little. Like, I don't want all the big velo guys. I want the guys with movement too. Like,
no, that's
velo. You can put that hitting machine up at 30 feet, no problem. That pitching machine. Really. But you can't prefer for that thing that takes a right turn with no blinker. That's
it's getting unreal, man.
And that's what's so frustrating. That's what's so frustrating about just the state of, and the state of the hitting world right now, right? Is just like the simple answer being to all the problems of hitting right now is just go back to thinking this and going back to thinking that. And I'm like, look, I'm just here to tell you, like, it's just not that simple, right? And I'm not even a guy that did it as high as y'all did, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, it's not that simple. Like every single big leaguer you listen to or ex-big leaguer, it's just like, dude, like I pretty much am waiting for one pitch the whole at bat. Like literally, like I only have one pitch. If I have a 7-pitch at bat, I'm maybe gonna have one pitch that I have a chance at. Like just like it's not it's like
it's an expert. You do everything you can to slow it down. I mean, I remember when I was pinch hitting, I'd go in there, jack up the pitching machine, high spin, strobe goggles on, like everything, trying to slow this stuff down. It's hard to combat that. It's very hard. Would you say
like anticipation helps with that too? Because I talk to guys sometimes too, where it's like if you know your pitch, you anticipate that pitch, and then it happens. It's almost like autopilot versus like, because even for me making a pitch, my best pitches are when I see it first, and then it's like there's no thought. It's like almost autopilot just engages, and then all of a sudden I get the ball back, and it's like, oh. And I've seen that with some hitters too, and it's like, oh, and then they say, oh, well, I was looking for it.
Oh,
look
for
at
sure.
be anticipation, right? Where it's like,
I mean, people talk about the iPads in the dugout, or they didn't have them in 2020. And like, it's like guys are constantly in the video room, looking at what they might possibly get. Like if I get in this situation, what am I likely to get this? Like John Danks, do you ever get in a 3-0 count with the runner on second against him and his righty? 99% chance you're going to get a changeup. Like that's how he is. So yeah, there's certain situations like if I can get him in this count, or if he gets to this count on me, I can expect this. That yeah, you gotta.
I love that.
To the point now, like you have to start studying. Like you have to start kind of like, this goes back to, it's more of a cat and mouse. It used to be like see ball, hit ball. You're not gonna do that. I don't think you can do that consistently at that level anymore. So maybe some guys can. But I really don't think like the stuff's too good. The reports on the hitters are too good. Like I know the Rays, they attack their hitters and bullpen on angles of arms and stuff. Like the pitching reports are so sophisticated as individual hitters. Like you got to start having you got to sell out and kind of get to a spot where you have a higher chance of getting a pitch that you know is coming, and then not miss it.
Yeah. Yeah, Miggy talks about that all the time, man. Like he'll be like, I'll set him up for the next at bat that I'm going to get, and I'm going to look for this on 2-1 because I know he likes to go here on 2-1. So I'm going to take this fly out to right field, knowing that the next at bat I'm going to get him to 2-1. He's going to throw a changeup, and I'm going to take it out to right center. Like that's what it's come down to on the hitting side. So thanks, Zing. Really appreciate you freaking making that hard on us, man. I really appreciate it.
I love Miggy, man. I've been studying that dude forever, and it's fun watching how he makes, little adjustments as he goes too. But he just, even watching his stuff he's been working on this offseason, you can see it's maybe a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it's progressing, and it's like to have put in that many reps over the years, it's awesome to see a guy. I think he's obviously a generational player for us.
It's going to be a sad day soon because all those guys are going to be retired. Like it was hard for me, man, because Maurer was my guy and he's gone. Like that made me. I was tore up about that, man. He's my guy. Like he's my guy, and like they're all going to be gone soon, man. Like
yeah, they are, man.
They're all going to be gone soon. Like, I mean, I'm glad for like Salvi, right, that he had the year he had last year, and so hopefully he'll get a couple more years out of it, right? But man, it's just like all these guys I watched growing up, man. All these generational guys are about to be gone, man. And then the friggin' baseball writers aren't going to put them in the Hall of Fame for whatever reason after that. So,
gosh, mess.
Gotta love it, man. Gotta love it.
This is both of our favorites. I know it's probably a lot of people, but this thing's sitting right here.
Yeah.
So I had
Oh yeah.
You want to talk about it,
baby?
That's sick.
I was reading stuff this morning, and they were talking about how it's like, people trying to emulate swings, and it's like, yeah, you want to learn stuff, but it's like at the same time, how many of us?
Nobody.
Like for me, it was always Ken Griffey Jr. in the backyard, and then it was Gary Sheffield from the right side.
Yeah. I remember playing freaking home run derby, and like I used to hit the most home runs when I was freaking trying to hit like Gary, man.
Yes, I love that.
All the time. I love it, man. That's good. Elaine, man, you're a stud. Thank you for taking the time. One, I know you're very highly sought after, but I appreciate our friendship and just the ability to talk hitting. And man, just thank you for being so open-handed all the time and just being willing to give stuff away. It's uncommon, and man, like even this, right? You giving away stuff that's just amazing, right? So that's just, and what's cool is like that's really how, like what Zing and I wanted this to be, and I think that's how Zing and I kind of are, and I'm sure Mark's the same way, right? It's just like trying to help anybody we can and help them have what we didn't have, right?
Sure, bro.
This game is awesome, right? So.
Yeah, I wish I had you guys early on in my career, man. Like what y'all do is good stuff, man. Like you help a lot of you help more hitters and more players than you think. I promise you, there's guys that you'll never reach out to that are following your stuff and buying into what you're doing. You're helping a lot of people out there, man. So keep up the good work. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it and look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Absolutely, man. Well, you're a stud, man. I appreciate it. So everybody, thanks for tuning in and watching. I would go back and watch that and listen to it again because there's a lot of great stuff. And make sure you follow Lane and Zing. Like Lane's at OK Swings on Instagram. Man, he's putting out great stuff. And yeah, man, he's just uncommon. So when you can find people that are truly open-handed and have no strings attached, and there's no red pill or blue pill, right? It's just freely given, right? And Zing's the same way, right? Zing and Mark are doing great things out there. So you guys are all awesome, and I appreciate y'all for being on and jumping on. So Lane, you're a stud, man, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Boys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure you were able to get a lot out of that. So because of that, make sure that you share this, right? Make sure that you put it out on social media, on your stories. Make sure that you subscribe, give us a 5-star review, because our passion is to see the game grow, and our passion is to see you become the best baseball or softball player that you can. So go ahead and do that for us, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode.